Greetings, salutations, respect, and love. I am Scott, and you, my dear friends, have wandered either intentionally or unintentionally onto the #1 prog rock channel on YouTube. It's the Prog Corner, and I am your host, Scott. Today, we are looking at that inflection point between classic rock and prog rock, two products of the 70s primarily. So yeah, it makes sense that there would be a little bit of overlap there. And if you've ever listened to any music from the 70s, you just know that prog rock had a huge influence on everybody across the spectrum. So we've been doing our prog, not prog series, our gray area bands. A couple weeks ago, I did post-punk bands that had a lot of prog in their DNA. Last week, I did, what'd I do? I don't even remember anymore. New wave bands that have prog rock in their DNA. And today, I'm doing the easiest one of them all, and it's classic rock, man. Yeah, I listen to a classic rock station at work. And it's just amazing how, there is prog in those classic rock playlists, man. They play Kansas, they play Styx, Alan Parsons, Supertramp, Yes, Genesis, Pink Floyd, Jethro Tull. They play them all and, interspersed with all the others, the Van Halens and the James Gangs of the world, whatever. But, yeah, I'm not including a few artists that, you could definitely put on this list. Billy Thorpe, Children of the Sun, Triumph, that three-piece from Canada sounded prog to me sometimes. How about some of those southern rock bands, man? Marshall Tucker Band, they sounded like prog to me sometimes with the flute and everything going on. The Allman Brothers, very progressive, their music. Sugarloaf, man, Green Eyed Lady was a big hit with that Moog. It just sounded so good. And Deep Purple, I'm not going to be talking about them, but I'm going to be talking about a Deep Purple spin-off band that makes this list. And then Carlos Santana. Yeah, those Santana albums were definitely prog, but I'm not including him. I'm including a spin-off band, if you will. And then, what do you do with Jimi Hendrix, man? I don't know. The very first time I ever heard the phrase progressive rock was actually a radio commercial for a Jimi Hendrix concert. They referred to him as progressive rock. First time I ever heard it, not including him. Here in my hot little hands, boys and girls, I've got the top 25 classic rock bands that have a whole bunch of prog in them. And I'm starting at number 25 with an American-Canadian band. They were formed in LA. They're called Steppenwolf. Yeah, there's Canadians in the band, but I guess they got their start in L.A. John Kay, Goldie McJohn, Jerry Edmonton, Mike Monarch, and Nick St. Nicholas. I always like that name, Nick St. Nicholas. That's cool. They put their first album out in 68. Their second album, called The Second, came out in 68. But I'm spotlighting their third album, At Your Birthday Party. It's got my favorite Steppenwolf song on there, Jupiter Child. I just love it. Are they prog? They're kind of prog, maybe a little more psychedelic or whatnot, but I love them. I need to feature Steppenwolf a little bit more on the channel because I do love them at number 24. How about Argent? Yeah, after the Zombies broke up, Rod Argent decided he was going to, form another band, the keyboard player. And wow, his third album with Argent was called All Together Now. It was dropped in 1972. And the big hit off of it, Hold Your Head Up, very proggy. Argent had a lot of proggy moments, particularly on that album at number 23. It's the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame inductees, Traffic, led by Jim Capaldi, Steve Winwood, Dave Mason, and who's that other cat? Yeah, Chris Wood. Yeah, I really like their early stuff, man. 1967, Mr. Fantasy, the self-titled, came out in 68, Last Exit in 69. But their next two albums to me are absolute masterpieces. 1970s, John Barleycorn Must Die, but I'm spotlighting their fifth album, The Great Low Spark of High-Heeled Boys. What an amazing band. Yeah, they're more jazz, I guess, but they're not fusion. They got some interesting instrumentation. Are they prog? I don't care. They're amazing. They sound very progressive to me at number 22. Let's go north of the border with Clay 2, man. This was John Woloschuk, D. Long, and Terry Draper. No, it was not John Lennon, Paul McCartney, and George Harrison. But these guys fooled a bunch of people for long enough, and their music definitely has a lot of prog to it, particularly their first two albums, 347 EST, that came out in 76, just amazing, with the calling occupants of interplanetary craft, or whatever that song was called, that the Carpenters went on and covered and made a big hit out of. And then 1977's Hope, both real good albums. They went on to do a few more records, but not as good as those first two, but very proggy. You know, they sounded like the Beatles, so yeah, they definitely had some prog in their DNA. At number 21, here's another band that a lot of people are confused about. Are they prog or not? How about Dire Straits? I know Prog Archives has them listed as prog related, and I do hear it in some of their expansive soundscapes, you know, songs like Telegraph Road. These guys came out swinging right from the gates with Sultans of Swing in 78. Their second album was Communique. I didn't like that as much, but the third album, Making Movies, was great. Love Over Gold in 82, and Brothers in Arms in 85. I guess there was one more in the 90s that I never bothered listening to. I don't know if it's any good or not, but Mark Knopfler, his brother David, John Ilsley, and Pick Withers. What a great band. Prog, not prog. I don't know, man. That's the whole point of this series, dude. At number 20. Let's go to the Netherlands and Golden Earring, man, and their ninth album, Moontan. This was definitely their most progressive album. Of course, it had, Radar Love on it, which to me sounded very proggy, but there were a couple other songs on this record, super proggy as well. Are You Receiving Me? It's like 9 minutes long. Vanilla Queen is just fantastic. The UK version had a song called Candy's Going Bald. We didn't get that on the US version. Real good song. You got Barry Hay, George Kooijmans, Caesar Zudewijk, and Reiners Gerritsen. Golden Earring. Are they prog? Maybe, maybe not. Who knows? Number 19. Here's a cat that's not prog, but he had so many, close calls with prog. It's Elton John. Yeah. This guy was in the touring version of the early Gentle Giant band called Simon Dupree and the Big Sound. When that band broke up and they decided they wanted to start Gentle Giant, he actually auditioned for the band. He also auditioned to replace Greg Lake in King Crimson. Probably best for all concerned that those auditions didn't go down so well. I guess Elton John had a copy of his debut album on MCA under his arms when he went in to talk to Robert Fripp. That's pretty cool. Not a whole lot of guys, with their own record contract are probably auditioning. Real cool, but obviously we're spotlighting his seventh album, Goodbye Yellow Brick Road, Side 1. Come on, man. Is there a better side of music and music? I don't know, man. It's so good. It starts out with that Funeral for a Friend and Love Lies Bleeding, Candle in the Wind, Benny and the Jets, Side 1 of Goodbye Yellow Brick Road. Just amazing. 1973. What a great double album at number 18. Heart is really not given any credit for being progressive at all. And I get it. The 80s, just like everybody else, they had all their big hits and How Do I Get You Alone? Nobody wants to hear that stuff, man. We want to hear Dreamboat Annie, Magazine, Little Queen, Dog and Butterfly, B.B. Lestrange. Those 5 albums are fantastic. Why do I consider them prog? Well, I don't know. Ann Wilson. How about that? Let's talk about Ann Wilson, man. She opens her solo gigs with I've Seen All Good People. Nancy Wilson, apparently her audition for Heart was she played The Clap and got the gig. And rightly so at number 17. How about Toto? Yeah, they're pretty prog, right? I mean, they have their moments. They're kind of a lot of things, right? Toto is classic rock. They got a little jazz. They got a little yacht rock in them. They got a little bit of this, a little bit of that. And mixed into that, there is definitely a little bit of prog. You heard it a bit on the first album, but on their second album, Hydra, I think you hear it a little bit more. And if these albums aren't completely proggy, that's okay, because the musicianship is stellar, the performances are amazing, the production is crystal clear and pristine, and you get Steve Lukather. What else do you want at number 16? Another one of my favorite bands from the U.S. It's Grand Funk Railroad coming in at number 16. Why are these guys on the list? Well, they had long songs, right? I mean, I'm Your Captain, Closer to Home, Inside Looking Out. Those were all, long tracks that had some different developments and different movements. But I like some of their shorter tracks too on their first three albums. So good, man. Time Out, the second self-titled album, just so good, man. And if you want to explore Grand Funk Railroad, just do yourself a favor, buy the Mark Don and Mel double album compilation. That's really all you need. Later on, they do, Some Kind of Wonderful and Locomotion and all that kind of stuff. Not my Grand Funk, but at number 15, yeah, let's keep it in America. Classic rock seems to be an American kind of thing. And out of Boston, there was a little band called Aerosmith. Why is Aerosmith on this list? Well, I mentioned the Mellotron and Dream On, but I contend that there was quite a bit of prog in all their early albums, yeah? Obviously, Dream On the first album, Seasons of Wither on the second album. You had maybe a few less proggy moments on Toys in the Attic, but I'm telling you, Rocks actually sounds very much like a prog album to me. Some of the other tracks, not Back in the Saddle or Last Child or anything like that, but songs like Lickin' a Promise actually make me think a little bit of prog for some reason. I have no idea. And then you get into the fifth album with Kings and Queens, I'll Draw the Line. That's pure prog, man. So yeah, Aerosmith's at number 15. Talking about classic rock and prog. Yeah, you got to talk about the Doors at some point. Yeah, they use the classical motifs, starting with Light My Fire and throughout, the keyboard heavy nature of their sound definitely paved the way for a lot of prog artists where keyboards became more and more important in the overall sound of the bands. And the Doors were absolute pioneers in this. Jim Morrison was an absolute poet. Their music was art. And if that's not prog, I don't know what is. At number 13, yeah, Santana's not on the list, but I'm throwing Journey in there. Sure, why not? We're talking about classic rock, so we're not really talking about those first three Journey albums, which are completely different than later Journey. Steve Perry shows up in 78, and they drop Infinity. The lineup at this point was Greg Raleigh, Steve Perry, Ainsley Dunbar, Ross Valerie, and Neil Schon. That's a great lineup. That's the best lineup Journey ever had. And as a result, Infinity, I think, is really good. Songs like Lights and Wheel in the Sky and stuff like that sounded kind of proggy, yet surely not as, proggy as their first three. But, they went on 1979, Evolution, a little more commercial, Departure in 1980. And by the time they hit 1981's Escape, they were the kings of arena rock, and not a whole lot of prog going on thereafter. But early Journey, absolutely at number 12. Another spin-off band. I said we were not going to include Deep Purple, but what about Rainbow? Yeah, I got to put Rainbow in there. If for no other reason, Rainbow Rising, man. What a classic. What a masterpiece. It's got Stargazer, and I don't need to know nothing else, but the rest of the album's really, really cool. Richie Blackmore, and that dude that was singing, man. What was that guy's name? Oh, yeah, Ronnie James Dio. Oh, one of the greatest singers of all time, and I contend that Rainbow Rising is a prog album. I absolutely love it. Some of Dio's solo stuff's a little proggy, too, man. I listened to Holy Diver the other day, and I'm like, that's kind of prog, dude. At number 11, we're going back to Boston, yeah. And it's the band Boston. And their first album included a track called Long Play or Foreplay Long Time. That's pure prog to me. But a lot of other stuff on their first album had elements of prog to it. Even the big hit, More Than a Feeling, to me, had some proggy elements to it in the way the song developed. I adore the first Boston album. I personally think it's an absolutely perfect album. The second album was all right. I liked side one, side two, not so much. And then by the time they got to Third Stage, it was over. Amanda's terrible. That whole album's terrible. But their fourth album didn't even have Brad Delp on it. So yeah, just stick to the first two and you're fine. At number 10 of classic rock bands that sound like prog to these ears, I'm going with Foreigner. And if one of your founding members is Ian McDonald, you've pretty much cemented your place on this list. And it's not just the fact that Ian McDonald was in the band. The first two or three Foreigner albums had definite moments of prog. Star Rider. There was Was there? I don't even know what it was called. I should have written it down. They had an instrumental on the first album, I think it was, with a weird name. That's really, really good. But to me, Foreigner had definite proggy moments mixed in with their commercial pop rock songs, and I just love it. At number 9, man, you knew these guys were going to be on here. It's Blue Oyster Cult. I love BOC. My introduction to them was that first live album, On Your Feet or On Your Knees, and I fell in love with the band, went back, got their first album, which dropped in 72, Tyranny of Mutation in 73, and Secret Treaties in 74. Those first 3 albums are just amazing, but they kept it interesting and proggy for the next couple. Agents of Fortune in 76 and Spectres in 77. Real good, very proggy. I love Eric Bloom, Buck Dharma, Alan Lanier, and of course the Beauchard brothers, Joe and Albert. Awesome stuff. Blue Oyster Cult. At number 8, here's a band that a lot of people could argue is actually prog and probably should not be on this list. It's Electric Light Orchestra. They're most definitely a gray area band. There's so much about their music that is proggy, particularly their first 3 albums, right? Self-titled in 71, ELO 2 in 73, and On the Third Day in 73. But I'm spotlighting El Dorado because it's got enough prog in there still. But, now we're getting into some, songs that people might actually know, people might actually remember, and that's what classic rock is all about, stuff that you're hearing on the radio. And ELO had tons of hits, but, they always had a little bit of classicism to what they were doing with the strings and everything. I absolutely love Jeff Lynne. Roy Wood and Bev Bevan were the originators of the band. I guess they were in a band called The Move. And then they formed ELO. And the rest is history, man. At number 7, another cat you knew had to be on this list is David Bowie. Absolutely one of the most progressive artists of all time. And most of the stuff that I'm hearing on classic rock radio, not the proggy stuff in general, except for maybe Space Oddity. But if you go through his discography, you will find so many moments of absolute progressive greatness. And why wouldn't there be moments like that when, you're utilizing guys like Rick Wakeman and Brian Eno and Robert Fripp and Adrian Belew? Clearly, David Bowie knew exactly what time it was. He always knew what the deal was. I love Bowie. At number 6, man. It's Chicago. I just did a ranking of the Chicago albums not too long ago, and it just reminded me of just how much I absolutely adore them, particularly their first 7 albums. CTA, chock full of great jazz rock. Chicago 2 is so proggy that Steven Wilson remixed it. Chicago 3, so underrated. Chicago 4 is the live album. Chicago 5, their first single album, is just special. It's so good. Chicago 6, very underrated. And then Chicago 7, the jazz fusion masterpiece. So good. I love Chicago. I do. At number 5, how about Black Sabbath, man? Yeah, I hear tons of prog bands, and almost all of them somewhere have a little bit of Black Sabbath in them. Everywhere from Motorcycle on down, you can hear Black Sabbath in so many prog bands, current and old, man. That's the kind of influence that this band had. I love Black Sabbath. Are they prog? Of course they're not prog, but they're prog related. They helped form the genre. Absolutely they did. I'm a big fan. And what's his name? Tony Iommi was in Jethro Tull for a week. So there's your prog connection right there. Rick Wakeman played on the 5th album. There's plenty of little connections there. Ronnie James Dio sang on 2 albums. And I think he's pretty prog with the Rainbow Connection. At number 4... yeah, it's The Who, and it has to be The Who. When you put out, not 1, but 2 stone cold rock opera masterpieces, you're going to be on this list. Tommy is absolute sheer perfection, but 4 years later, they did it even better with Quadrophenia, one of my 10 favorite albums of all time. Some days, Quadrophenia is my favorite album. And it is completely prog from start to finish. Don't be fooled. Don't be confused. Don't be fooled again, man. The Who is prog, or at least they were for 2 albums. At number 3, another one of those gray area bands, man. Where do you put them? I don't know, man. It's Steely Dan. They sound like prog to me. They have enough progression in their music with odd chord progressions and really good, instrumentation and soloing. The charts are off the hook. If you've ever tried to learn a Steely Dan song, either on guitar or keyboard, you know exactly what I'm talking about. It doesn't always sound super complex, but then when you break down the charts and really see what they're doing underneath, get under the hood, kick the tires. Yeah, Steely Dan's Prog, 1976, The Royal Scam, probably my favorite album by them, but you cannot ignore 1977's Asia. Those two, the Twin Peaks of Steely Dan's progression. To me, I think they're Prog, but whatever. At number 2, it's Queen. And when you write a song as proggy as Bohemian Rhapsody, of course you're going to be on here. But if you look at Queen 2, that was chock full of good proggy stuff. Sheer Heart Attack had a little bit. Obviously, Night at the Opera had a bunch. And it started getting less and less as the years went on until they kind of corrected the ship with Innuendo. But Queen is definitely on the list. Classic rock bands that sound like Prog. And at number 1, you know who it is. Absolutely. It's Led Zeppelin. I could make a case that Zeppelin is indeed a prog band. Probably not a strong case, but I could make a case that they're prog. Especially after we get to Led Zeppelin 3, Led Zeppelin 4, Houses of the Holy in particular. To me, that is their proggiest album. But, Physical Graffiti and Presence have plenty of prog too. And In Through the Outdoor is a different kind of record that has a lot of progressive elements and different sounds. They were moving in a new and exciting direction right before John Bonham died. So who knows where Led Zeppelin would have ended. But they are my number 1 prog inflected classic rock band. Let me know in the comments below who I missed. I'm sure there's a bunch, but this was like shooting ducks in a barrel. Talk about low-hanging fruit here today, but this was a lot of fun and I just wanted to go over it. Next up on the channel, we will probably be looking at the brand new album from Neil Morse, Restoration, Joseph, Part 2. I guess Part 1 came out like 6 months ago and I liked it. I think I like this one even better. Anyway, peace in the Middle East, kiddies. God save the king, man. Save him. That sucker needs your saving. He needs some saving right now. Do it. Do it. Save King Chucky. King Charles III needs your saving, and so do we all, man. So do we all. It's a cold, snowy day in Ohio, and my car broke down. We all need some help, but it's all good. We've got prog rock to see us through. I'll see you punks tomorrow.